Hey, welcome to the Dropship Podcast. And today we're going to answer a question we get often, actually. Usually comes on our ads, which might lead into a rant that John's going to go on here. But like, how long does it take to be profitable in dropshipping? I think it would probably be best for us to start with our own experience. Here's how it happened for us. My memory's getting a little blurry, but I do remember most of it. But like starting with our own experience, and then I've got a couple other a business I've been a part of, a business I've consulted, things like that. And so where do you want to start, John? You want to start with your experience? What was it like? How long did it take you to be profitable?
Yeah, so I'll do the first store experience for sure. I think my first store, definitely I broke, after 3 months, I was breaking even, right? So I think my first month, I lost money. And part of that was, I think in my first month, I made two sales in my first month. Took me 10 days to make my first sale. Part of that I had to refund because the product wasn't in stock, right? If you're listening, I bet you that's happened to you before. That'll happen. And then I was spending money on advertising and things like that, and I didn't recoup that in the first month. I think the second month I broke even. The third month I pretty much broke even, so I was making sales in both of those months, and I made more sales than the first month, but I was also increasing what I was putting into marketing and things like that as well to obviously try and generate more sales. And I didn't, that was just breaking even. And then from the fourth month in that business, so this is the one where I was selling home lighting, chandeliers, that sort of thing. I started to make small amounts of profit. So I'm not talking about thousands and thousands of dollars. Probably, I think the fourth month was probably around $1,000 profit. And then it just started to grow from there. Not consistently in the first 12 months, but there was some level of profit every month after that for the entire time that I had that business. That was my starting experience, and for me at the time, I think, remembering back, I think I did have thoughts at that point of because of the way that dropshipping had been marketed to me and the way it was marketed way back then. It was certainly a lot of people like, oh, you can be profitable from day one, and that's kind of normal and that sort of thing. And so I think I did have thoughts of well, is this working right? Is this the way it's supposed to be? And all of that sort of thing. Probably because I had come to it with expectations that were not right, which once I think we'll talk a bit more about that as this episode goes on, and about what we think of the question of profit and all of that sort of thing. But so I think that kind of had me thinking some unhelpful thoughts, which from time to time, but yeah, that was the experience for a brand new store for somebody who had zero experience. So at that point I had zero experience. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Well, I'm over here. If you're on YouTube, you saw me looking off to the side, digging, and I found it. I found my P&L from my very first business, the 3dprinterguy.com. So I'm going to give you literal real world examples here. So I launched late April. I got one sale in April, and I combined April and May in this thing. So I got 4 sales in my first month and a quarter, month and a half, $5,000 in revenue. My costs were a little bit more. I lost $51 in basically, April, May, we'll call it. June, I did 7 sales for $6,700 in revenue, and I made $545 profit. July, I did 21 sales for $10,000 revenue, and I made $1,080. So pretty good out of the gates.
That's not bad.
August, I went back down to 5 sales for $88.50 in revenue, but I made $671. And again, this is the beauty of high ticket. I didn't have to do a whole lot of work that month, as you can tell, right? 5 sales. September, 29 sales, $33,500 in revenue. That's the one where I made a giant order to a school, $3,200 profit. Next month, 36 orders for $13,000 in revenue. Again, made $1,150. Next month, 46 orders, profited $2,000, and that's where my books end. December is only through the 7th year. I'm very good with bookkeeping back then, I don't think. And then that's where I actually listed my business for sale as well. And so I sold that business again for $40K after just working on it for those 8 months or so. So very interesting to see the difference. I remember it being, a struggle back then again, right? 7 orders in the second month. And I remember, stressing out quite a bit. When's the next order going to come? When's the next order going to come? And, but it wasn't like I was able to quit my job on $545 profit or $1,000 profit in those first few months, which I think is, again, where this question's coming from, John, of how long does it take to be profitable? Is this going to be worth my time even to get started here?
Yeah, and I think that's that. Yeah, like I get it and I hate it at the same time. Like, I mean, I get why people ask it when you're coming to something new. You want to know what the experience is going to be. You're excited by the dream, right? You're like, yes, I could quit my job, and that's the thought of doing that, or whatever your pain point is that you're trying to get away from, right? Whatever you're trying to move towards, and being more in control of your time, maybe for some people, or spending more time with your kids, or with your partner, or traveling the world, or whatever it is. I don't know, whatever it is that you're chasing. The thought of that and the dream of that can feel so exciting that you want to get there as quickly as you can. And so you start asking these questions because you're like, to get there, I need this much money in my pocket a month, right? To be able to do that, right? As a minimum, I need this amount of money. And so that's got to be my profit. So how quick can I make that? And the reason I don't like that is because I think it's the wrong mindset to be in when you're building a business, right? Your mindset shouldn't be, what is the quickest and shortest way I can get to making X amount of money? I think that's because that's not really what it's about. And business is a long-term pursuit.
Hey, obviously you're interested in high-ticket dropshipping, wondering what you're going to sell. That's usually what people think about long before they ever purchase a course or even get started. John and I want to help you with that. We're running a 5-day challenge. Check it out at dropshipbreakthru.com/5. 5 days. You'll figure out exactly what you're going to sell, and you'll be ready to start your high-ticket dropshipping journey when you're done.
Once again, this is not trying to criticize anybody who's just starting out, because it's difficult to come to it with, I say that business is a long-term pursuit with the hindsight of having been in business for 8 years now. And it's easy to say that now. But I think you've got to think about where that you need to be somewhere good in. It's more important to be somewhere good in 2 or 3 years' time than it is to be somewhere good in 2 or 3 months. Right. And I think it's that question I posed. I think I mentioned this on a previous episode. Like, if you go out and ask people, would you take $200,000 today or no money for the next 2 years, but you get $20 million in 2 years? What would you take? Like right now, like most people or a lot of people will go for the small amount of money right now than going without for longer to get a larger amount of money. But that's in the long run not going to be the best thing for you to do, right? Because you'll blow through that money pretty quick and then you're going to be back at square one. So I think that's kind of similar to the mindset is here is for a lot of beginners is, what's the quickest way I can make a smaller amount of money, because they don't yet have sight of what could happen over time and the much larger amount of money that they could make if they're prepared to put in the work and think about their business in the long term. Because I think when you chase the money in the short term, you can actually get focused on things in your business that are not going to build a great business. Do you know what I mean? So like an example of that, of what I mean by that is people who like to make money really quickly tend to focus a lot on ads and just ads, right? Because you get an instant hit from those. But the reality is in the long term, yes, you're always going to do ads, but you need to do a whole lot of other stuff which doesn't provide an immediate return, like SEO, which we're always banging on about on this show, right? A lot of people who are focused on the short-term money in their business never do anything on SEO. And then they get a year or two down the track and that fast money runs out or stops working as well and they have nothing else happening. And then they're back to zero and they've got no money. And so that's sometimes I think it's great to think about how quick can I get to where I want to get to, but I think you have to temper that with what do I actually need to do to build a great business and be prepared to do that, even if it means you're not going to make much money for a few months. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of profit.
So I want to give you one example that supports John and one example that just blows it out of the water and says, fuck you, John. That's not it, right? But these are outliers, right? Yeah. So one outlier that I was part of, and we talked about on the show before, is I consulted 2 gentlemen in their first 3 months. Those first 3 months happened to be Q4. They got up and running just in time and did $250,000 in their first 3 months. And if you can assume, somewhere between a 10 and a 15% profit margin, that's $25,000 profit that they made in the first 3 months. That's amazing, right? That is rare. I've only been part of it once and I've only seen it a handful of times. more likely is this other outlier I'll give you on the other side. I have a business that you've heard me talk about where my best friend came to me and he's been wanting to work on this. And so that's real beginner level stuff. He had zero skills in online marketing, and we've been building this business for a partial year. And then this year, in our first full year, I'm looking at the books right now. It is December 28th. John and I are recording this. I believe this comes out like 2 months later, but like I am currently at 202,000 in sales. And we've made $7,000 profit on that, and that's on purpose. We're playing the long game. We understand that that 200,000 is going to turn into 600,000 or 6 million by us investing in the right things. And so we put a lot of time into content, into getting the design right on the website, so that it is fostered well for our SEO practices. We've worked on our messaging. We've worked on all sorts of things to reinvest in the business so that down the road it'll be worth far more. It'll produce far more. I don't want to take from something that's my baby. I don't want to pull and pull and pull out of this thing rather than give it everything it needs to grow. I want to reinvest in it. And so this is the other side of it, that you could have these great revenue numbers, which is going to give you the dopamine you need to keep going, but reinvest and don't take profit if you don't need to take profit, so that your baby can grow. And then eventually you'll have plenty of profit from which you can, pad your pockets and live a good life. And like back to what John said, whether that's spending more time with your kids or traveling the world, a bigger business is going to allow you to do what you need to do versus a small business that you've been just taking from and never allowing it to grow. So those are two different examples. They couldn't be more different, but it could. The answer really is it depends, right? I don't know what you're going to do in your business. The one factor John and I don't control here in dropshipping is you. How much work are you going to put in? How hard are you going to hustle? I want to believe that I hustled hard in the beginning to show you the numbers I showed you in the beginning from the 3D printer guy. But the reality is, like, I didn't know what I was doing, right? And so I was focusing on what I could focus on. Honestly, the course that John and I took back then, I don't think was sending me in the right direction. And so, I went down some rabbit holes that I wish I didn't go down, but I did the best I could at that time. Are you going to do the best you can? Are you going to put in the same effort that John and I put in the beginning to get the numbers we shared? Are you going to put the same effort in and, kind of be in the right spot at the right time, like the two gentlemen I consulted with, and just take off like a rocket ship? Are you going to take it slow and invest in the right things because you've listened to John and I rant on about branding and messaging and conversion rate optimization and SEO? That is the thing we can't control, and you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do here? Am I investing for the long term? Do I realize this time is going to pass anyway, and I should put this time into something, whether it's what John and I teach or anything else? You should put your time into something. You have to ask yourself these questions, and so honestly, it depends.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to emphasize that how soon or how much time it takes you to hit profitability is not a determining factor in how successful your business is going to be over time, right? So like if it takes you 6 months to make profit, or 3 months, or 4 months, or 2 months, or 1 month, or the first week you're in business, does not determine what your business is going to be like in 3 years' time. I'm going to bring it back to that. We're not starting a business here to make money to determine our success in 3 months, right? I mean, that's not what business is about, in my opinion. What you're doing years down the track and where you are years down the track and for the rest of your life is far more important. And so how much profit you make in the next couple of months is not going to have any bearing over how well you're going to be doing, in the long run and over the months and years to follow. I've seen so many people in this space, some who came out of the gates really fast and then plateaued. Some who took quite what most people might think is quite a long time to be profitable. In their second or third year, really smash it out of the park and be ahead of everybody else. And so it's there are so many, as Ben's mentioned, sort of variances. What market you're in, what products you're selling, what size of the market, how much competition, how much ads cost. All of these things have add some variability into what your profitability is going to look like. And so it varies wildly from person to person. There's definitely no one size fits all answer.
Are you calling every abandoned cart? Are you answering your phone every single time? There's so many intangibles here that we can't control, that if I didn't answer my phone in the beginning, I wouldn't have those 4 sales or 7 sales in those first couple of months. So, how bad do you want it? Look, one other example I thought of in my head, John, I know a couple people who never made profit, but they put in the reps. They worked on skill acquisition for a year, broke even, and then decided I'm going to use one of these skills and pivot. We've talked about them in the past, people who have pivoted out of this business model into all of the skills that you learn doing this business model and have flourished in other industries. And like, just know that like, you're not starting this business because you need it to change your life. You're starting this business because you're ready to change your life. You're ready to play the long game and play a game for a very long time. That could be dropshipping. That could be starting your own brand, launching your own products. That could be running ads for some other businesses. That could be starting an agency. That could be running social media. That could be really doing a million different things, but you have to have the skills with which to use to do any of those things. And so that's all life is, skill acquisition, and how many reps can you put in to get good at the skills that you're acquiring.